So the first piece to understand about the method, for the IM method, is to understand that first, in order for us to make something change, we have to be able to identify what that thing is that we need to change. And so the first stage of this process is going to be, how do we identify what it is, and then how do we change it? And so the first step in this process is being able to identify something that is triggering us or causing us an issue. So for me, for example, if somebody was causing me to feel frustrated or attacked, I would then want to identify, the first step would be to identify the time frame in which this particular event has occurred in my life, because it's the first time that this event has shown up in my field. Okay? And so if you want to think about pulling weeds, it's essentially what we're doing is trying to identify, first we find the weed and then we pull it out by the root. And so what we're going to be doing is identifying, doing a drill down method to identify what it is. First we need to go into either the feeling or the event that's occurred. You know, how is this making me feel? Where did this feeling first show up in my field? Or what is this situation that I'm in? Where's the first time I was in a situation like this? And so these are the kinds of questions that we're going to want to identify. Going into the feeling is really important, I think, in many cases. If you can put a name to it or an identification of some kind to it. So if I'm in a situation where I feel like I'm being attacked, what's the feeling that I have? Is it anger? Is it fear? You know, it could be anything that triggers you, and then you're going to want to basically do a drill down technique, which I'll go into in a moment, to identify where that first showed up in your field. And when you can identify the time frame that first showed up in, when you pull that out by the root and you clear that particular event, or you clear that particular feeling from that event, oftentimes the whole weed goes with it, because it kind of creates this network, if you will, of other events that have been triggered by this one original event. Oftentimes those events do happen early on in our childhood, when we have a very hard time being able to understand or being able to really realize what it is that's just happened to us. And as a child, we don't understand certain situations very well when they occur, and they, you know, something that seems very simple and small can become a really big deal for us, and then that will continue to show up in our field over the course of our lifetime. So many times when I'm working with people, a simple event like dropping a jar of jelly on the floor where the parents react badly could be a situation of having clumsiness go throughout your entire life, of continuously dropping things and you don't know why. And it's because you've never really addressed how that made you feel when that happened back when you were 4 or 5. And so once we take that out of the field, you start to see a totally different shift in what's going on in your life. That particular event is no longer charged. So I basically consider a situation that happens that creates this emotional charge. So what we want to do is drill down to identify where that first showed up in your life, so that we can clear that out of your field. We're basically changing the agreement that you have with that situation, changing your belief about that, and releasing it using heart coherence. And through that method, we will be then releasing that charge to that event, so that it doesn't continue to show up and cycle in your life, because you will find that these patterns tend to repeat and repeat and repeat until you address them. This is part of the process of learning and growing and expanding as a conscious being. So that's basically kind of the concept is, something happens today, causes a feeling, we identify what that feeling is, we make a statement, and then once we've made that statement, we then will muscle test for that statement. If it's a statement that we're like, wow, I don't want to hold that agreement with my world, then you're going to make a new statement that you want to put in, and then you're going to basically create the circuit, which I'm going to explain the circuit, and you'll be then releasing that and changing that. So what you can imagine is you can make a huge list, you know, even throughout your day. Let's say you're at work and you don't have a lot of time, you know, to deal with each and everything that pops up. But if you kind of keep a list next to you as you go through your day, you can remember, this person said this person said that, or this particular event happened and it triggered and this is what it made me feel like. And if you can kind of keep a list, you can then go back later on that night or that evening or at the end of the week and kind of look at that whole thing and say, what's the beliefs here? And then you will then release those all in one shot, and you put in new statements. And so that's the concept of doing the I am method. It's the I am agreement. It's what you are and what you hold in your field. And so that's basically the concept. It's just kind of an overview, and I'm going to get into exactly how to do that as the